profit as the sole purpose of business. Milton Friedman said the only social responsibility of business is to make profit, so long as it stays within the rules of the game. Maybe that's what Equifax thought they were doing last week when 142 million people lost their data and they took 50 days to tell anyone, and in the meantime 3 directors sold shares worth £1.2 million. As long as they stayed in the rules of the game. So that was the world that I walked into, and I think it's the world that maybe many of us walked into, and I didn't know any different. So I worshipped in that world. It was held up by 2 sacred pillars, intellectual ability and authority. I had a degree in chemistry. They put me in the marketing department. It didn't really matter what degree I had, they just wanted to know that I'd got a brain. And the idea was that if I had a bigger brain, then I could tell you with a smaller brain what to do with my authority in service of profit. Those of an academic leaning will recognize this as agency theory, which many people have written books and books about, but most practicing managers don't know anything about it. But this is the ideology that has been at the heart of most corporate businesses, and therefore most businesses in the last 100, 150 years. It's a creation of 19th century economic thinking. But the problem we have today is that business model has a shelf life on it. It's a model that served a purpose. It's a product of the Industrial Revolution. I'm not saying it's evil. I'm just saying and challenging you to think about, is it what's going to get us into the next stage of the game? Because what's challenging this business model is this one word of transparency. If you think of all the major drivers we've had in the last 15 to 20 years, globalization, diversity, Generation Y, new media, all of those drivers add up to a world where nothing can be hidden, where all of us have access to the truth. And unfortunately, we've had access to truth about abuses of authority in leadership that we haven't liked and that we haven't felt reflected the trust that we had placed in that leadership. And therefore, this bolt of lightning of transparency is striking that pillar of authority month after month, year after year, as every new headline comes out. One of the people I interviewed for my research was a guy called Ben Page. He's the managing director of Ipsos Mori, the polling organisation in the UK. They've done a survey in the UK every year since the Second World War, since 1945, about social attitudes. The only stat in that survey that has consistently fallen over that period is the percentage of people who trust those in authority to do what is right. It's now standing at 29%. 29% of us trust those in authority to do what is right. Fiammetta Borgia, a researcher at the University of Rome, says about transparency, transparency is destroying the opaque lives of organisations. The more we know, the more we want to know, and the more there seems to be to disclose. So we are hooked on this. We are hooked on transparency. And we were digging and digging to prove that they cannot be trusted, that they don't care about us. That's our sort of paranoia and our sort of obsession. It's fueled by the media, and therefore it's undermining the resilience of this traditional model of business. If you want a good example of transparency and the difference it makes, United Airlines. How many of you have seen the video of David Dow being escorted from the United Airlines flight earlier this year? Are you telling me that wasn't happening 15 years ago? Of course it was. It's just that we didn't know about it because there weren't 5 iPhones pointing at the blood pouring from his mouth at that time. But these days, as I say, nothing can be hidden. The chief exec of United Airlines, Oscar Munoz, his initial reaction to that incident was that David Dow was being difficult and belligerent. 15 years ago, he just said that. We'd have not known any different. And we just said, he's in a position of authority. He must be right. The video went viral in China. 200 million people watched it within 48 hours. Share price dropped 8%. Oscar Munoz had a road to Damascus moment and declared that it should never have happened, and he would see to it that the staff involved and the processes and procedures would be rectified. But by then, we'd all seen it, hadn't we? He is no longer chief exec. The investors took action, and he lost his role in that organisation. So this is the changing of the game, that leaders who are still playing in that old game are getting caught in moments like this and not anticipating. So leaders anticipate, managers manage, and if we're leaders, then I think we should be anticipating the collapse of this and judging whether our organisation and our sectors at what point are we in the cycle with this model? At what point will it no longer be fit for purpose?